Hello and welcome. What's the secret to getting rich? Well, there are plenty of suggestions, spawning a huge global industry in books, lectures, and even board games. A conventional approach to financial independence says we should study hard at school, get the best possible job, work hard to pay bills, and save as much as possible for retirement. Our guest today says the system is flawed and keeps the wealthy rich while others struggle along that conventional path. Robert Kiyosaki is an American entrepreneur who shot to fame more than a decade ago after self-publishing his first book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which attempts to teach people how to make money work for them as opposed to working for money. Well, today the Rich Dad series has sold more than 26 million copies in 38 different languages. In his latest book, Conspiracy of the Rich, The 8 New Rules of Money, Robert Kiyosaki argues that our school system is a relic of the industrial age, geared to producing employees with almost no financial literacy. He says when it comes to basics like balance sheets, profits, losses, assets and liabilities, we are woefully ignorant and so not truly in control of our financial destiny. Robert Kiyosaki joins us today from Phoenix, Arizona. And so today we ask, is there a conspiracy of the rich to keep us financially ignorant? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. And you can send an SMS or email, and we welcome your phone calls on the show. Robert Kiyosaki, great to have you on the program.
Oh, thank you. It's my honor.
Good to start off with, I guess, for our viewers who are not familiar with the concept, what is the basic idea behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Well, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a true story. I'm fourth generation Japanese American, born in Hawaii. And my real dad was my poor dad. He was the head of education for the state of Hawaii, a PhD, great guy. But as you know, most school teachers don't know much about money. So my dad, my poor dad, died a poor man. And my rich dad was my best friend's father, and he was a man with virtually no education, but he ultimately became one of the richest men in the state of Hawaii. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a very simple, and that's why it sold so many, a very simple story about what two fathers teach their two sons, my best friend and I, about the subject of money. And as you know, we don't teach much about money at school, so that's why we learn about money at home. And that's what Rich Dad, Poor Dad's about.
It's interesting, as you talk about gaining financial literacy, and if that's such an important skill, why is it something that isn't taught in schools? Why don't kids get an early start in it?
I asked myself that question since I was a kid, since I was about 9 years old when I started studying with my rich dad. And my rich dad just started teaching me playing Monopoly. He played Monopoly over and over again. And he said the formula for great wealth is found on that board game. It's 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Mm-hmm. And I said, is that all there is? I'm 9 years old. He goes, yeah, that's it. And so that's all I do today. I primarily play Monopoly as an adult. But I think if people really knew how much going to school, getting a job, and how much you pay in taxes and how you'll never become rich, I think people would leave school. So I think the main reason they don't tell people the truth about money and why the rich are getting richer and the tax laws and banking laws is because most people would just leave school. So this is a waste of time.
Well,
so I think that's the reason.
Yeah, I wonder if there are those who say that children can only absorb so much, or that children should be left to be children. I wonder, do you see a starting point at what age children should start getting these kinds of skills?
That's a great question, because at what age is a child interested in money? And I know kids who are like 5 years old, they know the difference between a $1 bill and a $20 bill. And so I think kids are naturally interested in money. And it doesn't have to be that serious. Like I said, I just started playing Monopoly, and I still play Monopoly today. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, it's interesting, we talked about the education system just now. We had a viewer that sent in an email stating the following. It's from Syed Arshid, who wrote in saying, education is a kind of investment, like real estate. Now, I know that a number of educators and thought leaders believe the education system is flawed, and you also explained how you think a lot of people, if they knew what was going on with schools, would leave. What would you change in the schooling system? How do you see it as flawed? What would you change?
Well, there's a number of things. Financial education begins with literacy. Do you understand the vocabulary of money? And do you know the difference between cash flow and capital gains? That's one. Do you understand the tax laws? When you say to a child, go to school or get a job or become a doctor, those people pay the highest percentage taxes at least in the United States. Where a person like me, I can make millions of dollars as an entrepreneur and an investor and pay 0 tax legally. So if you understood taxes and all that, plus how the investment world works, you might make other decisions about a life's course. What profession would you take up?
I'm going to put a couple of emails to you because a couple of viewers expressed their views. The first one is from Khalfan Al-Aremi, who wrote in saying, for some people, education and a good job are the best ways to get rich. And another, who wrote in from Nigeria, Kunle Lawal, wrote in saying, graduates are being groomed to work for multinational corporations as the height of their careers, instead of owning one. Now I wonder, in your opinion, is it possible to get rich working for someone else?
Oh, yes, it is. I'm not against education. There's three basic types of education. There's academic, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's very important. The second is professional. You know, become a doctor or a lawyer. In my case, I became a ship's officer and an airline. I'm a pilot. But there's no financial education. And the reason when I got out of the military, I flew for the Marine Corps, the reason I didn't go on to become an airline pilot like my peers did was simply because I'd still be an employee. And the airline industry is in trouble today, so a lot of my peers lost their jobs anyway. But the tax laws really punish A students. It punishes them. Like I'll say it again, doctors and lawyers in America pay the highest percentage of taxes, where a guy like me who was a C student, you know, I can make millions.
I know a number of people who've picked up your books and actually do apply the principles that you say quite religiously to their the day-to-day lives. Now, I know you give some fairly controversial advice, so let's get to one or two things. You say cash is trash. What do you mean by that?
Well, I said that about in 1981 I started saying that, and I got crucified for that. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I said your house is not an asset, and all my real estate friends, you know, don't send me Christmas cards, or they hate me now for saying that. And I said savers are losers. And the reason for that is you look at the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, they've printed more money in 2009 than they've printed in the first 100 years of existence. So every time the U.S. prints this counterfeit money called the U.S. dollar, it really robs you and I of our wealth. So savers are losers because, you know, for every dollar the Fed prints, that means your dollar is worth less in savings. That means your labor is also less in savings. But it also means you'll pay more in taxes to pay the interest on that funny counterfeit money, and then you'll pay it again in higher inflation. As you notice, gold keeps going up. So that's why I say cash is trash, simply because in Conspiracy of the Rich I wrote about how in 1971 President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, which basically made all currencies, whether it be the yen or the euro or the shekel, it makes it worthless. They're not worth any money anymore. Well, they're just going down in purchasing power.
Yeah. That advice, you know, spend, don't save, does it apply even when you look at the current economic situation, when you look at people who are really struggling to you know, get their money out into their basic needs?
Yeah, it's really tragic. You know, America had the lowest savings rate in the world, and then this crisis hit. Now they're the highest savings rate, and they're doing exactly opposite. And that's my whole point. If you knew what you were doing right now, I would be buying silver instead of trying to save dollars, because silver, for the first time in world history, if you knew, you know, financial education is not only a little bit of world history. Today, for the first time, there is more gold than silver on planet Earth. So gold's at $1,100 and silver's at 18. Well, silver's the biggest bargain on history. So I wouldn't be saving dollars. I would be shifting into silver or oil or gold.
I feel the market's moving as you say that. Now, let me put a question to you that came in from a viewer in the USA. Linda Taylor in Michigan wrote in saying, you can't be an expert in everything. May as well allow an expert to handle your finances. How do you feel about that when someone says, well, look, I want to trust someone else with my money?
Well, you got to ask yourself, is the person you're trusting your money a salesperson or a rich person? Most financial planners, and not, God bless them, you know, but they're salespeople. They're not rich people. You know, and the 401k, which most Americans invest in, or in Canada, the RRSP, or in Japan, the 401k, or the superannuation in Australia, they're the worst possible investment. You look at what Time magazine said just 2 months ago. They said the 401k was the biggest scam ever perpetrated upon the American public. And that was the cover of Time magazine. And I've been saying that all of these years. You look in 2002, I wrote Rich Dad's Prophecy, and I said the 401k was ripping people off. So what's happening is people are turning their money over to people they think are financial experts, and I question what an expert is, including myself. But are they salespeople, or are they really rich people? And that's the question I would ask.
It was interesting what you were saying about property and real estate, because I know you put quite a fair amount of emphasis on the real estate market as an investment tool. And I wonder, when you look at this, the fact that the real estate market was really responsible for much of the issues that certainly the Western hemisphere has faced in the recent economic downturn, how would you, have you changed your view on it at all?
No, if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I always talk about cash flow. You see, as a professional investor, you have to know the difference between cash flow and capital gains. 90% of the people invest for capital gains. That's where they'll say, oh, my stock went up in price, or my house went up in value, or my net worth went up. I don't care if my prices go up and down. I only invest, 9% of the time I invest in property that sends me a check every single month. So in good times, I get the check every month. In bad times, I get a check every month. And that's called cash flow. Another point here is this, is capital gains on real estate is taxed very high, and cash flow can come in at zero. So that's really a little financial education. So I don't care if my house goes up or down, or my apartment buildings and my commercial buildings go up and down. Just send me my check every month. That's all I want.
Well, Robert Kiyosaki, we've got more questions for you. We're going to take a very short break here. Back with our discussion when we return. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We've been discussing financial literacy and the important lessons on money management that are not necessarily taught in school. I'm joined by one of America's best-known personal finance gurus, Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, which advocates breaking out of the rat race by investing in real estate and other businesses to build wealth. And actually an interesting point that came to me just as I was thinking about the show, Robert, is does the financial literacy, or does the skill and the potential skill that can be acquired depend on a person's culture? Do you find variations in the culture of people, the way they approach this?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, but more than just culture, I would say from economic class. If you come from a poor family, what I'm saying is pure heresy. And if you come from an academic family like my family, all PhDs, it's academic heresy. And for the rich, they go, what's so hard about this? So it's not so much about ethnicity or anything like this, because every country has its rich and its poor and middle class, but it's just really what economic class you come from.
What is the conspiracy you refer to in the latest book? When you talk about the conspiracy of the rich, basically, what do you see that to be?
Well, conspiracy of the rich is in two parts. The first part is the history of how we got here, because it didn't just start with this real estate stuff. It's been going on for centuries. For centuries, the rich have always exploited the poor. So the first part of the book is a little bit of history, because if you can see history, you can see the future. And the second part is how guys like me get out of this mess by printing our own money. See, if the real thing is that the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913 was formed against the wishes of the U.S. Constitution. The Federal Reserve Bank is not federal. It is owned by the richest European families in the world. It is not a bank. It has no reserves. It has the power to print money as much as it likes. So let's say it issues, it prints $1 billion. That money, they just wrote a check for it. It doesn't exist. It's like just making it up. But they want the interest from the taxpayers to pay the interest on that debt. And that's really what it's about. It's about why this economy is collapsing, is because they just started pushing the world into greater and greater debt. And around the year 2002, they started giving home loans to people with no jobs, no income, just to get them to borrow money to keep the economy afloat. But that's 2002 is just a symptom of 1913. So that's the first part of the book, and the second part of the book is how I play according to the rules of the rich. So I'm not against the Federal Reserve Bank. I mean, they're giving me a lot more money now than ever before, but they're not giving it to the poor and middle class. It's tragic.
Interesting you say about getting out of the rat race and building sort of independent wealth here. We had a question from through Twitter from a viewer who uses the name Falky8773. It says, how and where would the few who control the world find people to be their subordinates if everyone had an empire?
Well, they do it in Conspiracy of the Rich. I write about the conspiracy against the U.S. education system. In 1904, a man named John D. Rockefeller took over the financial education system with a thing called the General Education Board. And then they dictated what the government taught kids in school. So the way they had to do it was one of the ways, not only taking over the banks, but they had to take over the school system. So when you see stuff like that, you'll understand kind of what's going on. And that's why Conspiracy of the Rich, the first part is history, the second part is how guys like me play by the rules of the rich, which is different than going to school and getting a job. They're very different worlds.
Well, there was a viewer from the Philippines who wrote in for the show a question for you, or a comment, from Abdul Ghani Salapuddin, who wrote in saying, being poor or rich is a matter of choice, not destiny. Our destiny is in our hands. It is up to us to pursue it, to make it happen. But surely not everyone has the same opportunity, do they, Robert?
No, but they don't have it if they're financially uneducated. Like the average person is working, in America, they're working for the US dollar. Well, all over the world, the reserve banks of the world, like the Bank of Japan and all that, are dumping the dollar. And yet people are still working for the dollar. That's why if you read in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I say the rich don't work for money. The rich acquire assets. And so how can a person know anything if they're not financially educated? And they think, well, all I have to do is make more money. Well, what good sense does it make to make more money when the Federal Reserve is printing trillions of dollars? That's financial stupidity. Why work for money when the Fed can print it automatically? That's all I'm saying. Why do that? Why save it? Why save it when they're printing it? I don't know.
What went through your head when the stimulus package and President Obama's sort of attempt to try and put the economy back on track? What went through your mind when you heard about what was going on?
Well, if you read Conspiracy of the Rich, it's on target, on schedule. That's what they're going to do every time. That's what FDR did. That's what Hitler did. That's what Mao Zedong did. It's been done throughout history. It's repeating itself again and again. And like I think Obama's going to come up with what was known as the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, to get people to go back to work, with the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. So the way Obama's going to flood the market with money is create these funny jobs, like in the name of the green environment. You can see it now. They're giving people incentives to insulate their homes and all this, but that's the way they get money, funny money, into the system. And you'll see it happening again. History does repeat.
Well, in that, people talk about financial markets, the global markets being in cycles. The bear and bull markets basically going up and down. How does the state of the market play with what you advise? I mean, what should people be watching out for if they're going to follow your advice?
Well, again, in Conspiracy of the Rich, you've got to understand history. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Bank was formed. In 1944 was the Bretton Woods Agreement. The Bretton Woods Agreement basically required all the countries of the world to join the World Bank and the WTO. And to do that, the World Trade Organization, they had to copy the Fed system. And then like the Bank of Japan, they have to store U.S. dollars. Bank of China stores U.S. dollars. And then in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. That was the biggest, in history. And suddenly the U.S. could now flood the world with funny money. So all the people who are saving U.S. dollars, they're going, what happened? The dollar is dropping in value like a rock. But that's the way the U.S. can pay off its bills. And that's what's happening. So that's why I'm saying to people, you have to learn to use debt. And most financial pundits, they get out of debt. If you're not in debt, you're not playing the game. And then that's why gold and silver are more important today.
Interesting, and just in our live station chat room, there are people around the world discussing this as we go out live. Petros in Cyprus says, don't save, just spend. I disagree with that. If I want a holiday this summer, I wouldn't get it by spending, but saving.
Well, he's a consumer, not a rich man. That's the difference. I have a lot of money and I can go on any vacation I want. I just don't have to work for the money. He has to probably work and save, and that's a working class mentality. So it's a very different mindset. I have a very different mindset. That's why most people go to school, get a job, work hard, live below your means, save money. That's not my mindset. If that's your mindset, good luck. But you're working for a toxic currency, the dollar or whatever paper, what's called fiat currency. It's disastrous right now. The money supply has been polluted by the U.S. Federal Reserve System.
Robert, how do you bring peace of mind and a sense of happiness into the equation? How do people balance this desire, in your opinion, this desire to get wealthy and develop this kind of financial independence, along with just having some degree of peace of mind, not worrying too much, and actually having a sense of happiness, irrespective of financial status?
Well, a lot of times people say, I'd rather be happy than rich, and my saying is, why not be both? And today in America, there's a lot of people who are not happy because they've lost their jobs or losing their homes, and they don't have enough money to afford health care or retirement. So what's the definition of happiness? So my definition of happiness is to understand money or financial education so that I'm not at the effect of the Federal Reserve or U.S. Treasurer or President Obama. I just want to be an independent person who understands the world of money and has plenty of it, and not have to work and save for it.
In your opinion, has the American dream gone then? Is there still such a thing as the American dream?
I think it's gone. I think, I know everybody's saying that 2010 is going to be a great year. I'm writing a piece called Predictions for 2010. I'm on Yahoo Finance, and I will show you the graphs and charts I look at, and you can make up your own mind. I think we're going into one heck of a time in 2010, 2011, and 2012. So I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm not concerned about me. But if you can see what's coming, maybe you can take some evasive action. The Fed is printing money.
Well, this is what I wonder, is that how can, I mean, when you say take some action, is there just something very basic that people can do if they're worried now, listening to what you're saying? Is there something that the average person can do?
Yeah, right now, I don't care if you have euro or yen or dollars, right now I'd be buying silver and gold. And because they're going to, if the U.S. devalues the dollar, everybody else has to devalue their dollar. You see, look, if the U.S. devalues the dollar, that means, let's say you live in England, your exports get too expensive for America, so the Bank of England has to drop its rates, which means inflation goes up in England. So it's this game of chicken being played with money. The irony of it was President Obama, when he was running for president, he said that China was the biggest manipulator of the money supply. That's not true. The United States is. And so I would, if I lived outside the U.S., I'd be watching what the Fed is doing and what they're saying, and be very careful about this thing called money. It's really a currency. It's just paper. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. For the very first time in America, the people who save, they're making less money by putting it into U.S. bonds. The bond rate went down below parity.
Well, I'll
so
tell you,
everything right now, everything is screwy right now. That's what I'm saying, so pay attention.
Robert Kiyosaki, you've certainly given us food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Good listening to you.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for being with us with your questions too. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows. You can send us questions and comments for our guests. But for now, from me and the team, we'll see you next time.